Hello and welcome to the Inner Codes of the Beautiful. We have been on a journey exploring the various facets of the sun, the manifestations of Surya as the Adityas. In our journey so far, we have explored 11 Adityas. Today we'll be looking at the very last, the final Aditya among the 12 Adityas, the Aditya that we see when sun is in the sign of Pisces, which is something that usually happens between mid-March to mid-April. The Aditya that we see here is called Viṣṇu Adityā. Viṣṇu is the youngest Aditya, but he's also the ablest of all the 12 Adityas. The reason being, Viṣṇu is Paramatma, or the universal soul. Viṣṇu, being the universal soul, he pervades the entire universe, both the manifest and the unmanifest universe. Hence, he pervades all the beings in the universe. And Viṣṇu is preoccupied with restoring the balance of dharma and bringing one back to the central core of dharma. And how he does this is by bringing a sense of discrimination between the three gunas. The gunas being the inherent nature, the three types, basic fundamental types that are inherent to nature. One being sattva, the other rajas, and the third being tamas. So by bringing about a sense of discrimination between the three gunas, one can rise above these three gunas, and by doing that, it can overcome one's weaknesses. Human weaknesses, frailties are transcended, and one goes back to one's inner core, and every being's inner core is the divine. So Viṣṇu is the one who helps you transcend these gunas and go back into your divine, into your inner core of the divine. And hence, it is not a surprise that Pisces, the natural 12th house, becomes also the moksha bhava, or the house of liberation. By overcoming one's own gunas, one transcends all the traps that one has to encounter in one's existence, in one's life, and transcend these gunas and go back to one's divine core. And by transcending, one has moksha or liberation. Viṣṇu is the youngest of the 12 Adityas, but like I was mentioning, he's also the ablest of all the 12 Adityas. In fact, he is the most powerful of the 12 Adityas. It was Viṣṇu who overpowered Indra and took over as the sovereign of the three worlds. The reason Viṣṇu defeats Indra is because of Indra's tendency to adopt means and methods that are not entirely righteous or dharmic in order to retain control and retain his power. So Viṣṇu is the one who gathers forces to fight darkness. And whenever he gathers these forces to fight darkness and restore this balance towards dharma, it is always preceded by tumult and upheaval. And here there's a very interesting connection with the story of Raja Mahabali and the Vamana Avatara. Raja Mahabali was the Daitya king, Daitya being from the lineage of Diti, as in the sister of Adity. The sons of Adity, as we know, are the Adityas, and the sons of Diti are the Daityas. Raja Mahabali was a grandson of Prahalada, and he, being a Daitya, an Ashura king, at one point he did get access to the Amrita, or the nectar of immortality. So the Devas went to Mahavishnu because they were worried that if the three worlds were in the control of the Asuras, there would be an imbalance in terms of a swaying away from Dharma. But Mahavishnu did not go and take on Raja Mahabali in a war. Instead, what Mahavishnu did was he took the form of Vamana, the Vamana Avatara, in order to address this issue. So, Mahavishnu came as a young Brahmin boy. The boy's name was Upendra. So Upendra was this young Brahmin boy who came to attend Raja Mahabali's Ashwamedha Yajna. Raja Mahabali was conducting the Ashwamedha Yajna in order to establish himself as the sovereign of the three worlds. And he was guided by his guru, Shukracharya, the guru of the Ashuras. So, when many of the Brahmins had gathered for the Ashwamedha Yajna and the rituals were performed, on the conclusion of the Ashwamedha Yajna, ritual gifts would be given. Gifts and donations would be given by Raja Mahabali as his token of gratitude for the services rendered. So, Upendra was also there, and after all the valuable gifts of gold and land and cattle and milch cows were given by Raja Mahabali to the various Brahmins, when Upendra's turn came, Upendra, the little boy, asked for 3 steps of land. So Raja Mahabali was a bit taken aback, a bit flummoxed, and asked Upendra to ask for something much more valuable than just 3 small steps of land. But Upendra was adamant. He said he would just want 3 steps of land. It was at this point that his guru Shukracharya thought something was amiss, and he promptly decided to advise his disciple Raja Mahabali that he should simply ask this little Brahmin boy to leave the place because he smelled trouble. But Raja Mahabali in turn told his guru that the whole purpose of him doing the Ashwamedha Yajna was to establish himself as the sovereign of the 3 worlds. And if he were to not give just 3 small steps worth of land to this little Brahmin boy, then the whole purpose would be defeated. Because it was so incongruous, he decided to go ahead against the advice of his guru and grant the wish of this little Brahmin boy Upendra. So when he did that, as a ritual offering, water is poured onto the ground from one's palm. When Raja Mahabali tried to do that, Shukracharya, his guru, took the form of a bee and blocked the spout from which the water would pour out from that little pot. And what Vamana, who is of course the avatar of Mahavishnu, did was he promptly took a blade of the dharba grass and poked the spout, and in the process poking the eye of the bee. And hence, of course, Shukra goes blind in one eye. That is, of course, a story for another day. But what happens was Mahabali goes on to grant the gift of the 3 steps to Upendra. But little does Mahabali know that this Upendra would take the form of Trivikrama of Mahavishnu. The first step, he covers all of the Bhuloka, the world. The second step, he covers all of the Svargaloka, which is basically all of the heavens. And there is no place for the third step. And it is at that point that Raja Mahabali offers himself and he bows down in front of Vamana. And then, of course, Vamana places his foot on Mahabali, and Raja Mahabali then goes into the netherworld and he becomes the king of the netherworld, which is the Patala. And it is from that we have the tradition of the Guru Diksha, where the Guru places the foot on the head of the Shishya once the Diksha is given. Now again, there's an association of Vamana with the 12th house of Pisces, because Vamana represents Jupiter, who is the lord of Pisces, and also associates with Guru. So the practice of a Guru Diksha also comes from Pisces of the natural 12th house. So when this was done, what we need to see here is, as Trivikrama, he took 3 steps. So Mahavishnu moves in 3 steps. What is the significance of that? 3 padas, but we see here the connection of the 3 steps with the Gayatri mantra. The Rig Veda mentions that Dhyaye Sada Savitra Mandala Madhyavarti Narayana. Savitra Mandala is the sun, Madhyavarti is the center, Dhyaye Sada. So Narayana eternally resides in the heart or the center of the sun. So the association of Narayana in the center of the sun emerges from this. And then of course the question is, the Gayatri mantra is made up of 24 bijas. So 3 into 8 giving 24. The 3 steps of 8 bijas each. And the question is, what are these 24 bijas? Now the sun is the one that punctuates time. It is from the sun that we get our days and nights, we get our months, we get our seasons, and we get our years. So sun is the keeper of time. Now if Narayana is at the heart of the sun, what is Narayana doing? He is the Sukshma Vara of the sun. The Sukshma Vara means, Vara is Vasara, Ra is the Agni Bija, the fire element. Vasara means where Agni resides. When you say Vasa, it means residing. You say Srinivasa. Srinivasa is where Shri is Nivasa. Where Shri resides is Srinivasa. Similarly, Vasara means where Ra or Agni Bija resides is Vasara. That Vasara becomes Vara. And Sukshma Vara means he is the subtle form of Agni, where Agni resides, right at the heart of the sun. And it is from the Sukshma Vara that we get the Hora. The Hora is basically the time, the unit of time of 1 hour within a day. So 24 Horas make up the day. And it is hence Narayana who is at the heart of the 24 Horas. And these 24 Horas are the 24 bijas taken in 3 steps, 3 into 8, giving the 24 bijas of the Gayatri mantra. So what it also tells us is that Viṣṇu is the one who is the great unifier. He takes us back to our core, to our origins, to the very fundamentals, to our fundamental nature. And every time we sway away from our fundamental nature, which is the heart of the divine, he comes. And that is what Krishna reiterates in the Bhagavad Gita. So he says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuktanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Whenever there is a fall of virtue or a decay of virtue or righteousness, and whenever there is an exaltation of the unrighteous, then he appears time after time, yuga after yuga, age after age. And that is Viṣṇu Adityā. Let's take up a couple of case studies to understand Viṣṇu Adityā better, to see how Viṣṇu Adityā blesses us and the whole of mankind has a new understanding and benefits from it. Albert Einstein. Einstein is today considered one of the great physicists and scientists of modern times. Albert Einstein has his sun in Pisces in his 10th house, and the sun is conjoined with his Lagna Lord Mercury and also his 12th Lord Venus, which is exalted in Pisces. Now clearly, Viṣṇu Adityā should be blessing Einstein, particularly in his area of work. Einstein had a strong desire to have an understanding of nature in a fundamental way, and also in a way in which all the fundamental forces of nature, matter and energy, is able to be understood in a unified framework, the unified field theory, so to say. So he questioned the existing status quo of the time, the Newtonian model. He questioned the understanding of scientists, the theoretical models to express the way nature works, the way universe works, and he had to reject them in order to come up with his own understanding. And he put in a lot of work, and then this classic Viṣṇu Adityā's way of going about it where he came up with a unified way of understanding the workings of nature. In 1905, he came up with 4 seminal papers, pivotal and fundamental to the understanding of nature and the way the forces of nature work. Theory of relativity and quantum mechanics are 2 areas which are today considered as the 2 pillars of modern physics, which was a very fundamental contribution of Einstein. So here you see Viṣṇu Adityā's blessings, first in terms of questioning the status quo and coming up with a unified understanding. It's going back to our fundamentals, going back to our core. And then he benefits us with this unified way of looking at nature and moving closer to the truth. And then, of course, he puts in the hard work and he comes up with this framework where today it is a changed way of understanding the way we look at nature and the workings of the universe, which is a contribution of Einstein and which is a blessing of Viṣṇu Adityā. Let's look at another very illustrious personality, Ustad Bismillah Khan. Ustad Bismillah Khan is considered to be one of the finest musicians to emerge from India, and he was certainly the greatest exponent of the Shehnai. Ustad Bismillah Khan has a sun in Pisces along with Jupiter, which is the Lord of Pisces. So we should expect that Viṣṇu Adityā's blessings would be abundantly seen in Ustad Bismillah Khan's life. Ustad Bismillah Khan was born in Dumrao in Bihar, but he grew up in Varanasi because he was apprentice to his uncle Ustad Ali Bakhsh. Ustad Ali Bakhsh used to play the Shehnai in Lord Vishwanath's temple in Varanasi. So growing up, Ustad Bismillah Khan picked up diverse musical styles, very rich musical styles of the land, and he incorporated that into his musical playing. And Ustad Bismillah Khan would accompany his uncle playing in weddings and religious ceremonies. And as he picked up these diverse styles, he incorporated them, and he started playing music which was considered till then as impossible to be played on the instrument, Shehnai. So you can start seeing Viṣṇu Adityā's blessings where Ustad Bismillah Khan started creating new things which he could offer to the world later. And it was only in 1937 that Ustad Bismillah Khan got a chance to showcase his skills. And in 1937, during the All India Music Conference in Calcutta, Ustad Bismillah Khan presented Shehnai on a classical concert platform. Till then, we need to keep in mind, Shehnai was seen as a ceremonial instrument meant for only auspicious ceremonies and so on, but not as a classical instrument. And in 1937, Ustad Bismillah Khan performed classical music on the Shehnai. And from that day, Shehnai was viewed differently. It was seen as a classical instrument. And the credit singularly for that goes to Ustad Bismillah Khan. And there you see Viṣṇu Adityā's blessings, where he is able to offer to the world something completely new and change the world view. And of course, his contribution was both seminal and his contribution was very fundamental, and he performed across India and many other countries as well. And his stature grew, and we can see in terms of his legacy that following that in 1947, he was chosen to perform classical music on the ramparts of the Red Fort when India got its independence. And when the tricolor, the Indian flag, was unfurled, it was to the music of Ustad Bismillah Khan. And you can see again Viṣṇu Adityā's blessings where his legacy was lasting, in a sense that following that year, every single Independence Day would begin with the performance of Ustad Bismillah Khan or his performance being played on national TV. Such was his legacy. And of course, he also had the blessings of Viṣṇu Adityā in the sense that he was a great unifier. He was seen as the icon of religious harmony. Being a devout Muslim, he was also the one who performed in Lord Vishwanath's temple. So he was seen as this icon of religious harmony, and his legacy is lasting in the sense that in Iran, one of the finest concert halls is called Talar Musiki Ustad Bismillah Khan. in honor of Ustad Bismillah Khan. And also in the Western world, you have the legendary guitarist Eric Clapton, who cites Ustad Bismillah Khan as a great influence, and he's gone on record saying that he's tried to imitate the music of Ustad Bismillah Khan in his guitar playing. So you can see the abundant blessings of Viṣṇu Adityā in Ustad Bismillah Khan's life. We have now come to the conclusion of our journey of exploring the various Adityas. As we come to the conclusion, it's also good to know how the various Adityas influence us. It is not merely the Aditya and the sign alone that influences us. There are also a couple of other influences. For those interested in Jyotisha, this might be a good tip. When we see sun in a particular sign, it basically tells us what is it that motivates us from the level of the soul. What is it that we deeply desire? So if one has sun in Aries, we can say that the motivation at the level of the soul is similar to the qualities of Viṣṇu Adityā. But let us say this Viṣṇu Adityā happens to be in the first house, which is the bhava. Then that also again is Viṣṇu Adityā. But if it were to become your third house, then it would be Mitra Adityā. That means your abilities are similar to that of Mitra Adityā. Now, how do you go about doing it? It has to be seen from the Arudha Lagna. So from the Arudha Lagna, it could be Samudra Adityā. That means it tells you how one goes about achieving one's goals. So there are three Adityas that come into play. The sign tells you what you desire from the level of the soul. The house or the bhava tells you your abilities, and your Arudha Lagna will tell you how you go about doing it. So that's something that you can keep in mind, and propitiating these Adityas will enable strengthening the blessings of these Adityas in your life. Thank you for joining me in this series. Thank you for joining me this week. We will take up a completely new series in the next week. Till then, take good care and goodbye.